Hello and welcome to the Keystone Kickoff Show. I'm Jim Galanti, along with our co-host. He's also the co-host of the Obligatory PSU Pregame Show, and for the blogging contributor, Chris Buchignani. Chris, how you doing, my friend?
I am doing well, Jim. It's a pleasure to be with you as always.
Well, it's great to get the chance to talk real football again, or semi-real football. It was the blue-white game on Saturday.
Fake football, but that's okay. That's the best we can do right now.
I will take it, even if it's fake football. You know what, Chris? We talked about this before. The spring game, it doesn't tell you everything, but it does tell you something. And
very little, as a matter of fact. But yes, it is not completely devoid of meaning, just mostly.
There are a few things you got to pick and choose to find those nuggets. What stood out most to you, though?
Well, Jim, my number one takeaway from the game was the play of transfer cornerback A.J. Harris. I know you and I have talked before on the Keystone Kickoff Show about how important the Georgia transfer is going to be to Penn State's defensive backfield coming in to stabilize that position that's losing 3 starters off last year's squad to the NFL. And I thought what we saw from him in the game, albeit with all the qualifiers of it being a spring game and a scrimmage, was very encouraging in terms of him being very much the 5-star recruit he was out of high school and the type of player Penn State is going to need to compete for the number 1 cornerback spot and stabilize the position going into the fall. So I was really, really encouraged about what I saw from A.J. Harris.
And sometimes we're not just looking for results in the game. You're looking for certain actions, certain individuals, how they stand out. He stood out. He made plays that made you think this is a big-time player.
Yep, in coverage, read and react, tackling, everything. You saw signs of the type of player you hope you're going to see this fall.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think his play was exceptional, and what's even better, it was at a position of need, which is cornerback. I'm very confident after what I saw. You combine that with his pedigree, as you mentioned. He was a 5-star coming out of high school, someone that was able to go to Georgia and play. That's the kind of guy that you want coming in, and you're right, he could step right in and play. There were a couple other interesting things to take out of the game. I thought it was real fascinating, Chris, especially with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen sitting out. We know they are 1 and 1A as far as the running backs go. That's been decided. But there is room for a third running back, and this was what appeared to me to be an actual competition for a position at third-string running back.
Yeah, I thought you saw some promising things from Cam Wallace, who James Franklin talked up before the game. I thought even London Montgomery, who maybe has gotten the least amount of pub of the younger running backs, showed some things, including potential to fill in the kick returner role this fall. But to me, the big headline coming out of the running back room was Quentin Martin, the true freshman running back, Belle Vernon, PA kid, who showed off exactly the speed we have been hearing about throughout his recruitment. And again, it's only a spring game, right? But the speed doesn't change. And it showed this past Saturday. And I thought watching him play, that's a true freshman who has a potential to get on the field and play meaningful snaps this fall. Maybe even you go right from high school to burning his red shirt. Because when I think, number one, about an offensive coordinator and Andy Kotelnicki, who is renowned for his creativity, he is going to find ways to use that home run hitting speed, even if it's only in certain packages or certain situations. And we'll talk about it probably a little bit, even coming out of the spring game. Wide receiver and the pass catchers are going to be a question mark heading into the season. So if you do end up having to paper over the receiver position, having some other guys who can step in and make plays as pass catchers is going to be important. And I think Martin looks to be the type of player you could maybe use as a slot back. I thought in general, Jim, we saw a little bit more effort to get the running backs involved in the passing game than we've seen from Mike Yurcich's offense. So yeah, I'm excited about seeing Quentin Martin early and often this season.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be, as you pointed out, strictly as a receiver. He could come in as a second running back in certain formations and have an opportunity to catch the ball out of the backfield. You also
There are
mentioned
ways
that
to
he's
get him on the field with one or even both of the two stud star tailbacks we've got. And if there are ways to do it, Kotelnicki's the guy to find him.
and I like that idea. If you have a weapon, get as many of them on the field as you possibly can. If that means you have multiple guys that you label as running backs, so be it. We've seen it in the past. You have three good tight ends, you get three good tight ends on the field. Make use of them. Another guy that fits that same bill is Cooper Cousins along the offensive line. I know it's a little tougher to judge offensive linemen, and especially a game like this, but I thought it was significant that they had him in there with their top group of offensive linemen. I realized there were multiple starters missing, but I thought it was significant that they had him out there with the first group as a guard, and then also got him real time at center too, Chris.
Yeah, and he looked the part. We've been hearing since he's been recruited that this is a guy who could potentially step in and play snaps as a true freshman, which if it happens for an offensive lineman means things are either really bad or really good. And in this case, it's really good. Got a little nicked up right at the very end of the game, so we hope he's okay. But look, I'm a big Nick Dawkins fan. I'm very bullish on Nick Dawkins as a starting center, but just having a guy of Cousins' caliber there to add depth and to push the veteran starter, I think is good news. It's just good news for the program to be able to bring in a recruit of that caliber. So, yeah, I agree. Cooper Cousins was definitely a positive coming out of the spring game.
And our colleague Landon Tengwall, he even made a great point talking about if this is a guy who could fill in at both guard and center, be the backup at both positions, and play them competently as a true freshman, that's a real help to the offensive line.
A couple of years ago, we saw Drew Shelton have to step in and play important snaps. And so if Cooper can just be one of those types of guys who can give you security on the O-line, that's going to be very big for Penn State.
Right. Very seldom do you start and finish a season with that same group of 5 offensive linemen. The one other name, Chris, that everybody was talking about going into this spring was Abdul Carter with the position move from linebacker to defensive end. What was your takeaway from his performance?
Okay, well, this one does get a giant caveat of it being a spring game and then moving guys around and key players not appearing in the game. So to be fair, he probably was not facing something close to Big Ten starting offensive tackle caliber opposition. But, man, he sure did look very comfortable in that spot, didn't he? I mean, he looked like everything you expect from the guy, powerful, strong, fast. And I thought it was interesting that you saw him rush from a stand-up position, which is, I think, what we're kind of expecting from him. Looking a lot like another number 11, as people pointed out, what Dallas has done with Micah Parsons, transferring him closer to the line of scrimmage to take advantage of his skill set. So, yeah, I think is going to be fine. I'm not worried about that position switch at all, and I saw nothing on Saturday to change my mind.
You know what? If I'm an offensive tackle and I see him across the way, that quick first step, that's going to be scary. All right, Chris, give you the last word. Is there anything we missed?
Well, there's a lot you could talk about, but since we're talking defensive ends and talking about names to call out, how about the game that Amin Vanover had, Jim? We know what we have in Denai Dennis Sutton, and I think in Abdul Carter as well. If we can shore up that defensive end rotation, that's going to do a lot of things for Tom Allen in his first year as a defensive coordinator. And I thought we saw stuff from both Vanover and Nittany Lions to make me feel optimistic that both those guys are ready to take another step come the regular season.
And we know, Chris, traditionally at Penn State, that defense, they rotate people in at defensive end. We've seen it through the years. It looks like they have 4 guys at least that they could put out on the field. All right, Chris, that is it for our show. Thank you all for listening. Join us next time on the Keystone Kickoff Show.